Welcome back to the deep dive. For anyone, thinking about flying or already in that world, there's this thing called the FAA Medical Certificate. It's fundamental. Today we're really going to unpack what that means. It's not just like a slip of paper. It's a big part of how the FAA keeps things safe up there.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as, pulling out the really key bits from the pilot's guide to FAA medical certificates. We want you to get what this process is really about for flying safely in the U.S.
Right, because the main point, like the source says, it isn't just about checking a box. It's the FAA making sure a pilot meets, the minimum health standards needed to fly safely without being a risk to anyone. The analogy they use is great. Think of it as a license to be healthy enough to fly. And the bottom line is pretty stark. No valid medical certificate, you can't use your pilot license. Simple as that. Okay, so let's get right into it then. Does every single pilot need one? Because you kind of assume that, right? If you fly, you need the medical.
That's a really common thought, yeah. And mostly, yes, most pilots do need one.
Right.
But there are some interesting exceptions, which the guide points out. Like if you're flying a glider or maybe a balloon,
Oh, okay.
you generally don't need an FAA medical for those. Also, sport pilots.
Ah, the sport pilot certificate.
Yeah. Or even some flight instructor roles. Now, for sport pilots and some instructors, the key thing is you often need a valid U.S. driver's license instead of the medical, but there are specific conditions you have to meet. So yeah, there are exceptions. But for everyone else who does need one, it's not just one certificate fits all. There are different levels or classes.
Different classes. Okay, that makes sense. There's got to be a hierarchy, right? So for someone listening trying to figure this out, how do these classes work? What do they let you do?
Right, there are three main classes, and they definitely get more strict as you go up. The most common one, the one most people start with, is the third-class medical certificate. That's generally what you need if you're a private pilot, flying for fun, basically.
Okay, third class for private pilots. Got it.
Then you've got the second-class medical certificate. This one's required if you're flying commercially, getting paid to fly, but not for an airline. Think charter pilots, crop dusters, that sort of thing.
Right, commercial operations, but not airlines.
Exactly. And then at the top, you have the first-class medical certificate. This is the one with the highest standards, the most stringent checks. You absolutely need this if you want to be an airline transport pilot.
Wow, okay. First class for the airlines. So the requirements really match the job. So what does this mean for someone actually, going through it? What's the very first thing you have to do?
Well, the first step actually happens before you even see a doctor. It's all online now. You have to fill out the application using the FAA system called MedXPress.
MedXpress, okay.
Yeah. And it's not just like your name and address. It's a pretty detailed form. You have to put in your medical history.
Ah, the medical history part. That's where it gets really interesting, I bet. What kind of things are they asking about? What do you have to report?
Yeah, this is super important. The FAA needs to know about specific conditions that could, potentially affect your ability to fly safely. So the list includes things like certain mental health conditions, psychosis, bipolar disorder, severe personality disorders.
Okay.
Also, any history of substance abuse or dependency. That's a big one.
Makes sense.
Neurological stuff, too, like epilepsy, or if you ever had a transient loss of consciousness,
Yeah.
Fainting or blacking out without a clear reason.
Right.
Heart conditions are on there, obviously. A history of a heart attack, myocardial infarction, and really any other condition that could reasonably be expected to make you unable to safely operate an aircraft. The key is honesty. Don't try to hide things. After you've filled all that out carefully online, then you make an appointment with an A.M.E. that's an FAA-designated Aviation Medical Examiner.
Okay, so you complete MedXpress, be honest about your history, then book the A.M.E. appointment. So you walk into the A.M.E.'s office. What happens there? What's the exam like?
Right, so the A.M.E. does a physical examination. It covers the basics you'd expect. Checking your vision, your hearing, taking your blood pressure, just a general physical assessment.
Standard checkup stuff, mostly.
Pretty much, but geared towards aviation standards, obviously. But a big part of it is the A.M.E. will review the MedXpress application you submitted. They'll sit down and talk through your medical history with you, ask clarifying questions. Then, based on the exam and that discussion, there are usually two ways it can go.
Okay.
Outcome one, everything looks good. You meet all the standards for the class of medical you're seeking. If that's the case, the A.M.E. can often issue the certificate right then and there. You walk out with it.
Nice. Instant gratification.
Yeah, that's the ideal scenario. The other outcome is what's called a deferral. This happens if there's something in your history or something found during the exam that might be potentially disqualifying or needs a closer look by the FAA itself. But it's really important to understand a deferral doesn't automatically mean you can't fly. It just means the A.M.E. can't make the final call and your application goes to the FAA for a more detailed review.
Okay, deferral. That sounds a bit worrying, maybe. But you're saying it's not necessarily the end of the road. What kind of conditions usually trigger that? When does the FAA have to step in for this special issuance thing?
Exactly. It's not an automatic no. Some conditions pretty much always require this deeper review by the FAA, or what they call special issuance. The A.M.E. just doesn't have the authority to approve them directly. Examples straight from the guide include things like a history of coronary heart disease,
Right.
diabetes, specifically if it requires insulin use. That's a big one that needs careful FAA management. And certain mental health conditions, even if well managed, often fall into this category too. In these situations, yeah, the FAA will definitely ask for more information. You'll likely need to provide additional medical records from your own doctors, maybe undergo some extra tests, before they can make a final decision on issuing the certificate, possibly with limitations or required follow-ups.
So it's a process, but there's still a path forward for many people with these conditions, provided they can show it's managed safely.
Precisely. It's about demonstrating fitness to fly, even with a condition.
Okay, so let's say you get through all that, maybe straight issuance, maybe special issuance, and you have the certificate. Great. Now, how long is it good for? Does it last forever?
No, definitely not forever. How long it's valid depends on two things: the class of the certificate and your age.
Age comes into it again. Okay.
Let's break it down. For that top-tier first-class medical, the airline pilot one, if you're under 40, it's good for 12 calendar months for those airline transport pilot privileges. But once you hit 40, that drops to 6 calendar months for those same privileges.
6 months. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So twice a year checks for older airline pilots.
Basically, yes. For the second-class medical, the commercial one, that's simpler. It's valid for 12 calendar months for commercial privileges. Doesn't matter if you're under or over 40.
Okay, 1 year for commercial.
And then the third class, the private pilot one, if you're under 40, it lasts the longest, 60 calendar months. That's 5 years.
5 years, okay.
But again, age matters. If you're 40 or older, that third-class certificate is only valid for 24 calendar months, so 2 years, for private pilot privileges.
Interesting how the validity periods change so much based on age and what you're doing with the license. It really shows that risk assessment model you mentioned.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
More responsibility or higher age generally means more frequent checks. It's all about maintaining that safety margin.
So summarizing all this, it sounds like the core message is really about transparency and taking responsibility for your health, right?
That's exactly the key takeaway from the guide. Be honest on your application, be proactive about managing your health, and stay on top of those renewal dates.
Because it all comes back to the FAA's main goal, keeping the skies safe. And, well, that really does start with having healthy, fit pilots at the controls.
It really does. And, it makes you think, this whole process, this focus on personal health and honesty having such a direct impact on public safety, where else does that show up so clearly in our lives, beyond just aviation?
That's a great question. Definitely something to chew on. Well, thank you for walking us through all that complexity today, and thanks to all of you for joining us on this deep dive into FAA medical certificates. Hopefully it sheds some light on a really vital part of flying safely. Keep exploring, stay safe, and we'll catch you next time.